Yeah. Rekindling the flame, that's what we're talking about this month. That's our theme for the month. Rekindling the flame, knowing that the flame is life itself, as I said before, and that when we rekindle that flame with our attention, with our awareness of it, with our connection to it, then we become ablaze with the presence of God in our lives as our lives. Some years ago, my little great niece was about 6 years old, 7 years old, and her mother enrolled her, if you will, on a soccer team. I don't know if that's what you call it, but she put her on a soccer team to play little girls soccer. And they live in Ohio, and this was summertime, and they were playing soccer out, and it was kind of hot, not hot like Arizona hot, but it was Ohio hot in the summertime. And the kids were running up and down the field, kicking the ball, and Elise was just standing there looking. And the coach was trying to get her to kick the ball when it would come her way, and she wouldn't do anything but stand there and look, and she had all these frowns. And finally, the coach went out and asked her, "Why aren't you playing? Come on, when the ball comes this way, you have to kick it." And she looked at her and she said, "Who thought this was a good idea? What am I doing here?" I always remember that story. Her thing was, what am I doing here? Who thought this was a good idea? And so that's my topic today. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? How often do we ask that question, who thought this was a good idea? Right. At certain points in our lives, who thought this was a good idea? What am I doing here? And that is a question that is pregnant with so many answers in so many aspects of our lives. What am I doing here? We often ask that question when we're doing something that, or in some place that we don't really want to be. We don't usually ask that when we are where we want to be. But we ask that question when we're not sure how we got to where we are, how we got to doing whatever it is we're doing, whatever this activity may be. What am I doing here with these people? What am I doing here with this person? What am I doing here in this activity? What am I doing here? You fill in the blanks. And we also ask that question when things seem to be in a mess. What am I doing here? And then the other time that we can ask that question is when we find ourselves back in a place that we've been before. And we're trying to figure out, how did I get back here? How did I get back here? Well, you know what? It's the same way we got there the first time. But we don't recognize that we're doing the same thing over and over, and it takes us right back to where we've been. And we end up waking up one day going, what am I doing here? Who thought this was a good idea? But you know what? When we find ourselves in that place where we're saying, what am I doing here? We have to recognize that at some point in our lives, we've said yes to this place. We've said yes to being there. There's something in our consciousness that has brought us back to this place. There's something in our consciousness that has brought us to this place of this messy situation that we find ourselves in. Or it could be in a wonderful situation that we're in. But as I said, we don't usually ask that question when it's a wonderful situation, place we really want to be. We don't go, what am I doing here? That's usually the question that we ask when we want to make changes. When we want to make changes, when we want to see our lives differently, we want to live our lives differently, when we want to really be in that place where we recognize that life is for living, that life is for living, that life is for living, and that life is worth living, and that we want to live it to the highest and to the fullest and experience the allness and the fullness of life. And the only way we can do that, as I've said before, is to give it give our consent, our all and full consent. Give our all and full consent to life, saying yes to it, being open to it, being available to it, being available to just moving forward into what it is we really do want in our lives. And so, what am I doing here? Is anybody asking that question at any point in their lives right now? What am I doing here? How did I get here? And you know, the next question to ask, let's take a breath. The next question is to start asking, recognizing where we are, recognizing this may not be where we want to be, is to look at the place where we are. What are the gifts in this place? What are the gifts in this place? What are the lessons in this place? What are the blessings in this place? What can I learn from this place? How can I grow from this place? What do I need to release to get out of this place? What do I need to embrace so that I can move forward from this place? But those are questions that we need to constantly ask over and over and over again, recognizing where we are, recognizing that this may not be where we want to be, but answering those questions gives us a clue as to how we get from here to there, how we get from where we are right now to where it is we really want to be. And so when we start to look at answering the questions, what am I doing here? We have to rekindle the flame of faith and rekindle the flame of trust, because it takes faith and trust to get from where we are to where we want to be, if we're not where we want to be already. It takes faith and it takes trust. Ernest Holmes defines faith as a belief in an invisible principle and law that responds directly and specifically to us. It's a belief in a principle and a law, an invisible principle and a law that responds directly and specifically to us. That's what faith is, a belief in that principle, a belief in that law that we may also call God, that responds specifically and directly to us. And recognize that God is always God, as the reading said. God is always God. No matter what our objective situation may be, no matter what our emotional storm may be, God is always God. And when we recognize that, then we can start to have faith in that principle, in that law, in that presence, in that power, in that one mind, that one life that is our very life. And when we really anchor into that and believe in that, and as I said last week, hitch on to that. When we hitch on to that presence and that power, then we can move from where we are to wherever it is we want to be. It sounds simple, and it is. Easy? No, not necessarily. But you know what? It's doable. It's something that we can do by constantly practicing the presence, constantly doing the things we know, constantly trusting, having the faith that that power and that presence is right where we are always, having the awareness, as Ernest Holmes says, know that there's an intelligence to which we may come for guidance, for direction, for inspiration. Know that there's an intelligence to which we may come for inspiration, for guidance, for direction. A power responding to us, a presence pressing against us, an animation flowing through us, a light within us. And this thing that I'm speaking of, we call God. This thing we call God. Know that that intelligence is within us, which means to which we may come means it's within us. It didn't say that to which we may go out there. It's to which we may come. When we can come home to ourselves, when we can come home to that power and that presence within us, when we can come home to that place of oneness, when we can come home to that which lives and moves and has its being in each one of us, when we can do that, then we are in that place where we are ready to rekindle that flame of trust, trusting that this presence is always right where we are, trusting that and having the faith that this presence is always undergirding everything, guiding and directing us through everything, every situation, every circumstance in our lives. When we do that, we can just take a breath. We can take a breath and just sort of coast along with it, go along with it, knowing that we are well taken care of, going along with it, knowing that we are guided and directed in everything we need to do, everything we need to know is already known in the mind of God. And if we connect with that, if we hitch our wagon to that star, the God star, then we are one with it. And we can move forward easily, effortlessly in our lives. Sometimes we get off track and we just, follow that wagon again, follow that star again, hitch up again, fasten those seatbelts that I always talk about. And we keep moving forward. And that's how we deal with that where we are now, as opposed to where we want to be. And so there are a couple of things I want you to keep in mind as you start looking at what am I doing here. Really, really getting into that place of embracing the not know. Embracing the not know. That's one of the things that makes us scared about where we are and how we get to the next place. Embrace the not know. Be willing to not know. That's where our faith comes in. That's where our trust comes in. Be willing to not know how you're going to get out of this mess. Be willing to not know what your next step is going to be. Be willing to not know what your next move is going to be. Be willing to not know the how of whatever it is you want. Be willing to not know. That's what faith is all about. We don't have to know. We have to trust. We have to have faith that there's a knower within us that knows all, that is all. And as we really connect over and over and over and over again with that, it's easier for us to live in the not know. It's easier for us to move into that place of trust. It's easier for us to move into that place of, you know what? I don't know, but I know that there's a knower within me that knows everything, that knows all that I ever need to know. My mother used to always say that God will let you know anything you want to know. Anything you need to know, God will let you know, either by guiding you to the right people, the right circumstances, the right situations, the right books, whatever it may be. Whatever it is we need to know is already known in the mind of God. And so when we can connect with that presence that we call God, or whatever name you want to call it, or no name at all, when we can connect with that something within us, then everything that we need to know, how to do it, what to do, when to do it, with whom to do it, whatever, all of that is already known. And we just can walk forward in the not know, which can be a scary place because we like to know. We like to make sure we're on top of things. We like to make sure we know what the next step is going to be. We want to make sure we know what's around that corner over there. We want to know it all. And you know what? Sometimes we just don't. Sometimes we just can't know. But what we can do is trust. What we can do is embrace the not know. I don't know, but there's a knower within me that knows. That's embracing the not know. That's embracing the not know. And that is a real, real important thing to do, being willing to step out on faith and know that even though you can't see it, there's a ledge under you, that you're not just stepping out into thin air. You're not like, remember those cartoon characters who would step out? Was it Wile E. Coyote who would run off the cliff? Run off the cliff and they don't fall till they look down. So they're just going until they look down. And that's what we feel like sometimes, that we're afraid to step off because we're afraid that we're going to step out into nothingness. And it feels like nothingness. But you know what? There's always a wind beneath our wings. There's always, always, always something to hold us up, something to guide us, something to catch us. There's always that safety net that is with us always, wherever we go, whatever we do. And so that's what we have to know as we start to embrace the not know. So let's take a breath as we just think about that, just moving to that place of not knowing and being okay with not knowing. And the next thing we have to do is be willing to release and let go. Release and let go. We sing that song every week. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life. And my heart is open wide because I'm only here for God. That sounds so good. How often do we really do that? How often do we really release and let go? I call that hanging out in the let go. Hanging out in the let go. That's a Michael Beckwith term. Hanging out in the let go. When we can walk through our lives hanging out in the let go, we are releasing and letting go over and over and over again. We're releasing and letting go. We're being flexible. We're not trying to hold on to everything. We're releasing and letting go. And when we do that, no more struggles, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I'm free in the spirit because I'm only here for God. Do we really mean that? Do we really recognize that when we sing that song? I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life. Not I release and I let go and I run my life myself. Those are not the words. The words are, I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life. And when we let the Spirit run our lives, we can look at no more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. We're seeing by faith, not by sight, by faith. And so it's important for us to keep that in mind as we go through this time of, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I'm hanging out in the let go until Spirit guides me to the next step. I'm hanging out in the let go until the next step is revealed to me. I'm hanging out in the let go. I'm hanging out in the let go, and that's what we have to do over and over and over again. Embracing the not know, hanging out in the let go. And then the thing that we have to do next is to align ourselves in consciousness with where it is we want to be. We have to align ourselves in consciousness with where it is we want to be, because we can't experience anything without having it in consciousness, without having the consciousness for it. And so aligning ourselves in consciously aligning ourselves in consciousness with where it is we want to be. If you're not where you want to be, then the thing not to do is to spend a lot of time talking and moaning and groaning and complaining about how much you hate where it is you are. Because that won't get you out of there. Because the more you complain about where you are and how much you don't like about where you are and what a mess this is where you are, the more you are sticking yourself to that place. You become sticky, and it's like glue, just holding yourself into that place. Into that place. And so if we're in a place of discomfort, it means a change is about to happen, which is the first response to change is discomfort. So we become uncomfortable. We want to move to someplace else, and then we start talking about how much I really don't like where I am, how much I really wish I could be someplace else, because this place is just awful, and blah, 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 blah. We go on and on. I'm thinking about my mom, bless her. We lived in a small town in Alabama, and she went there when she was 20 years old to take a job as a teacher, and she did not like it from the time she got off the train. Anybody who ever knew her in her lifetime knew that story, that the moment she got off that train, she realized she did not like this little town in Alabama. And every day of my life with my mom, she talked about how she hated this place that we lived. Every day. Now, she was not a negative person. She believed in positive thinking. She believed in a lot of new thought principles. She read Emerson, and I remember her reading Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, and really talking about it and practicing it. But she talked every day about how much she hated this town we lived in. Every day. And I never understood, and I would ask her, why don't you move? And then she would tell me all the reasons why she couldn't, but she hated this place that she lived. And if she had never gotten off that train in this place, then she would have been living someplace else. But that just came to my mind for some reason right then, is when we want to move from where we are, we can't constantly talk about how much we hate where we are, because that's where our attention is. That's where our focus is. And that which we give our attention to multiplies and grows. That's what we give our attention to multiplies and grows. And we get more and more and more of it. And she gave that her attention. She lived there for 52 years. And every day that I was around her, she said how much she hated that place that she lived in. And I think, wow, I wonder what could have happened if she'd had a different attitude, if she'd resigned herself, if she'd looked at what the gifts were for being there, what the lessons were for her. And there were many gifts, but there was something about her that could not let go of the fact that she hated that place. And so I'm inviting you, don't do that. I'm inviting you, don't do that, not to do that. I'm inviting you to really look at what it is you want and then focus on that, because you can't complain about what you don't want and talk about what you don't want and expect to move from what you don't want. We have to focus our attention on what we do want. That's how we shift our consciousness. That's how we shift our consciousness, by focusing on what we do want, taking our focus off what we're seeing, what we don't want, and putting our attention on what we do want. And we do that, as I say all the time, through our spiritual practice. Just keep shifting our consciousness with constantly doing our spiritual practice. And you know another way we do that? We have wonderful practitioners here. See a practitioner. Start working with practitioners. If there's something that you want in your life, if there's a place that you want to be and you don't know how to get there, you don't know how to shift your consciousness so that you can get there, start working with a practitioner. Start working with a practitioner, having someone to pray with you, having someone to know the truth for you and to hold that the consciousness of where you want to be for you until you can hold it for yourself. That's what practitioners do. And that's what I'm encouraging all of us to do. Everybody needs a practitioner. Everybody needs to be working with them. And praying with practitioners after service on Sunday is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing to do, and I encourage everybody to do that too. And if there's something more that you need other than a Sunday service, after service prayer, then start working with practitioners. Have your own personal practitioner that you can go to, that you can call, who can help you move to that place in consciousness where you want to be so that you can move to that place in consciousness so you can experience that you want to experience and be where you want to be. And you don't have to ask the question, what am I doing here? So working with a practitioner, doing your own spiritual practice, doing the readings, practicing the principles that we know here, bless you, that we know here. Those are the ways that we change our consciousness. Taking classes. We have classes starting at the end of this month. Our new quarter is starting. And so what we encourage you to do is take classes so that you will learn the principles, so that you learn the practices, so that you will learn the tools for living that will help us to move from where you are now to where we want to be. We have foundations coming up, if you haven't taken foundations before, the basic classes, basic class for Science of Mind is foundations. That's the starting point of everything. And then we have treatment and meditation, and we have Practitioner 1 if you're interested in practitioner studies, and we have Reverend Sandra's metaphysical Bible classes on Sundays that keep going one after another, one after another, one after another. And all of these things can empower us to shift our consciousness, to shift the way we look at the world, to shift the way we move about in the world, to shift our relationship with the all that is, because we begin to understand even more and more the oneness principle. We begin to understand more and more how we heal our sense of separation. And that's the only thing that ever needs to be healed is our sense of separation from God. So when we're at a place where we're saying, how did I get here? What am I doing here? We're feeling separate. We're feeling separate. We're feeling separate. Because I think it was Hafiz who says that complaint is only possible when we're living in the suburbs of God. Complaint is only possible when we're living in the suburbs of God. Complaint is only possible when we're living in the suburbs of God. But when we're living in that place of oneness, there's nothing to complain about. There's nothing to complain about. Because everything is made new. All things are made new when we're living in that place of oneness. And so I invite you to really align yourself in consciousness with where you want to be. Where you want to be, regardless to where you find yourself right now. You may be on that soccer field and not want to kick that ball and thinking that who thought this was a good idea. But when you can look beyond that and say, okay, this may not be a good idea, but that is. And there's that within me that knows exactly what the good idea is, what the great idea is, what the great place is, and what's the best place for me to be. And so let's just keep that in mind as we go through this time in our lives. When that question comes up for you, what am I doing here? Oh, I'm open and receptive to Spirit just showing me exactly how to get from here to there and takes me from here to there. And that's exactly what we want to do. So embrace the not know. Hang out in the let go, release and let go. And then align yourself in consciousness with where it is you want to be. And watch your life unfold, because what you're doing is rekindling that flame of faith and rekindling that flame of trust and rekindling that flame of knowing that life really is for living. And all we have to do is just say yes to it. Yes. Yes. Let's take a breath as we turn within in this moment. I invite you to say yes. I invite you. Take a breath and to move into that place of knowing and sensing and feeling God's presence, to know that this presence is the only presence, the only mind, the only life, the only breath, and allow this breath to breathe us in this moment. As we do that, I know that this onlyness is my very life. It is the life of each of us here this day. And so from this place of awareness of this one life, this one power, this one presence, this one activity, this one mind, this one breath, I speak the word for all of us this day. Speaking a word of healing on every level of our being. Healing in consciousness so that we move and remove any blocks that there may be, and we just move forward easily and effortlessly in oneness with the all that is. We give this one our full consent by releasing and letting go and just saying yes. Yes, 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 yes. We rekindle this flame over and over again, trusting God more than we trust anybody or anything. As we know that all indeed is well, as we release and let go of anything that would block or hinder, and we open ourselves up to all the qualities of God. The joy, the peace, the love, the harmony, the well-beingness, the acceptance, the forgiveness and compassion, the abundance and prosperity, whatever it is that we may need, God is. God is. And I'm accepting this isness in each and every life for each and every one of us right here and right now. And so I just pause momentarily as I open this circle of prayer so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer this day. You may speak their names silently or aloud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names are spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping them. This prayer goes out to anyone on this planet needing prayer this day, knowing that God is in the midst of every circumstance, every situation, every event, every activity. God is. And so I simply say thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Infinite Presence. Thank you, Divine Mother. I just allow it to be now. And so it is.